Check, check, one, two. Check, one, two. All right. I will now call the working group for the relief of Connecticut borrowers to order in the most informal way possible. I'm Representative Corey Paris, and we're convening this meeting simply because to start off an important conversation, both nationally and here locally in Connecticut around student loan debt. I'm co-chairing this with Representative Eleni Cavros DeGraw, who could not be with us in person today, but she will be speaking and introducing herself very shortly. This once again, we're with our onset goal for this. We're trying to not just gather ideas or understand facts and figures around the crisis as it is today, but we're also working very diligently to try to identify policy matters in which we can continue to grow to help borrowers and working families and students across our state. What we almost have to do is to uh, stop the bleeding right now on the crisis as it is across the state of Connecticut. We are the last line of defense. This is not a local issue. The federal government has basically abdicated this issue, and we have nearly 500,000 borrowers in our state right now who are facing uncertainty around student loans. And we'll share some of those personal stories today. We'll share some of those narratives as an introductory period. And then we will obviously set the goals for the next meeting afterwards. Furthermore, our goal today is just simple and it's urgent. It's to listen, to learn, and again, to chart a path forward. We're here to identify, once again, just very concrete and proactive solutions to support Connecticut borrowers. And we hope that people understand that many of the individual stories are just very few narratives in the greater uh, crisis ahead of us. So when we give these facts and figures and updates as to where we are, from many agencies and offices here in the state, it will be helpful for us to understand that each individual borrower may be worse off or slightly better off than what we're giving in terms of the overall picture. And with that said, I will now move to remarks by the members and my co-chair on this. We'll start with my co-chair for this working group, and then we'll move along to members um, both online and also in the room. Representative Cavros DeGraw.
Good morning, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This is critically important that we're gathering together. I apologize for not being there in person, but I have a cold and thought it was best not to share that with everyone in the room. So, as Representative Paris said, this is obviously affecting thousands of people across Connecticut. We had already put into place what we thought was a good student loan reimbursement program. But as you know, even though that has started to roll out and we've rolled out a significant amount of money with that program, because of what is going on at the federal level, we are seeing people hit every day with not knowing that their student loan debt payments have resumed, with their credit sinking by hundreds of points. We need to do something, and that is what we are hoping to attempt with this working group, is to get enough information to continue to move forward and help people here in Connecticut. So I again thank everyone who has an interest in this, who's joined us today. We really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing the many stories that I know we are going to hear today. Thank you so much, Representative Paris.
Thank you, Representative Cavros DeGraw. And even though you are not feeling well, it's good to know that you are still able to join us. I would just like to recognize Representative Bronco as he is here in the room with us, a good ranking member of the Higher Education Committee, and then we'll go back to those online. Sir?
Thank you, Representative Paris. I appreciate this meeting being organized. It's an issue that affects a lot of our constituents across the state. It's an issue that strikes at the core of affordability for people coming out of schools and trying to live and work in Connecticut. So it's something that I hope we can have some good conversation around. I appreciate this meeting that we can begin this conversation to see what else we can do to make a positive impact. So thank you for this, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Representative. And for those online, I'd like to start with Senator Kathy Austin. For all the members online, if you could just briefly introduce yourself and so we can condense on time and we'll move forward to our other guests in the room. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is Kathy Austin, and I am here to take the information in on what we have going on this important topic.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Garibay.
Hi, Representative Jane Garibay, representing Windsor and Windsor Locks, co-chair of the Aging Committee, and thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Dillon, followed by Representative Haynes.
Good morning. I'm Representative Pat Dillon, and I want to thank you for convening this working group, and I'm looking forward to listening to some of the information and hearing the stories. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Irene Haynes, representative from East Haddam, East Hampton, a little bit of Salem, and former ranking on higher ed. Been working in the higher ed realm for all my years as a representative, and looking forward to seeing if we can come up with some solutions. So looking forward to the stories. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Representative. We will now be followed by Senator Lesser, Representative Lamarck Muir, Representative Godfrey, Representative Turco, and Representative Nuccio. Brief introductions, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's great to be on here. I'm Senator Matt Lesser. A decade ago, I worked with colleagues. We, at the time, focused on what we thought was the biggest issue in student loans, the servicing industry, and wrote the Connecticut Student Loan Bill of Rights. I am really concerned, and I hope that the working group has a chance to focus on some of the big changes in the recently passed federal legislation that could significantly impact the origination of loans. And specifically, there are now lifetime caps on what undergraduates, graduate students, and professional students can take out in loans. There's also the elimination of the Graduate Plus loan. And my concern is that that will cause chaos in Connecticut's higher education system and make education out of reach for low-income and middle-class families who are just struggling to figure out how to pay for college and for graduate school. And I think that that's something that Connecticut has some tools to address, but we have to think creatively about how to target that specific issue.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your work. Representative Lamarck Muir.
Good morning. I'm Representative Renee Lamarck Muir. I represent Chester, Deep River, Essex, and Haddam. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of this group. Looking forward to learning more.
Representative Godfrey, followed by Representative Turco.
Good morning, all. I'm Bob Godfrey. I represent the downtown part of Danbury, the home of Western Connecticut State University, of which Representative Paris, I understand, is an alumnus, and I'm looking forward. I know my constituents struggle with the cost and the cost of borrowing, so I'm looking forward to working together to come up with solutions, especially those that counter the federal government. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. And I might just add that you have the finest university parking lot in your district, sir, and I appreciate for you allowing and representing my car for many years, sir.
You're very welcome.
Representative Turco.
Thank you, Representative Paris, for convening in this with Representative Kavros-DeGraw. I'm State Rep Gary Turco, representing the 27th District of Newington and New Britain, which is home of, now, Representative Paris, you said that Representative Godfrey was home of the finest parking lot on a college campus. New Britain is home of the finest state university in Connecticut, Central Connecticut State University, my alma mater. Thank you to the chairs for convening this.
Thank you, Representative. I will never pit a fight against the state institutions in any way whatsoever. I concede to you on that point, sir. Now going to Representative Nuccio, followed by Representative Collins-Main, Representative Doucette, Representative Hughes, and Representative Callahan. And hopefully you all can remember that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Paris. This is Tammy Nuccio. I represent the 53rd District, which is Tolland, Wellington, and Vernon. I'm anxious to hear what everybody has to say, and I'm also very interested in just making sure that people understand what programs are available to them going forward, and how we can help people get the information that they need to kind of help with the student loan things beyond just what we can do here in Connecticut.
Great. Hi. Hi, everybody. Good morning, Representative Paris. I'm Elise Collins-Main. I represent the 146, which is downtown Stamford, and particularly interested in this conversation and this working group. And thank you. I'm so glad to be a part of it. I have UConn Stanford, that is a fast-growing university in our system. I have lots and lots of young working professionals with student loans. I've raised 3 kids. And I've also had a career in higher education in the publishing and ed tech sector. So also serve on the higher education committee. So it's just a really great conflagration of interests and concern for my particular constituents. So good morning, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. Hughes, Doucette, and Callahan.
Supposed to be Doucette first, but I'll go first.
Oh,
Because I was like, that's good because I put in a proposal a couple of years ago to the banking committee about keeping some of those borrowing costs in state instead of our student loan borrowers were paying to lenders based in Nashville and we wanted to keep our costs in state, promoting our students and keeping that lending capped at a minimum. So anyways, maybe Representative Doucette can talk about that proposal that we had a couple of years ago working with Chaffa, and maybe we can explore that again here in this working group. So happy to be here.
Well, thanks, Representative Hughes. Representative Jason Doucette, House Chair of the Banking Committee, as Representative Hughes and Representative Lesser alluded to. We handle some would say, some of the more mundane aspects of the regulatory landscape and servicing of student loans, and been doing that for quite a while. As Senator Lesser said a decade ago, and I guess I sort of took over the reins from him almost 8 years ago now, doing that, including working on a couple or at least one that I can recall summer working group on student loan borrowers. But it seems like a lifetime ago because a lot certainly has changed, which we're going to talk about here today, and look forward to it. Thank you.
I guess I'm up next, Representative Callahan from the 108th. I appreciate this group being put together so we could talk about that. A lot of our recent college grads, this is one of their biggest expenses, and also preventing them from staying in Connecticut and affording housing. Representative Paris and I have talked about this quite a bit in Hartford. I put a bill into the Finance Committee a couple of years ago to provide tax exemptions for principal and interest of anyone who took out a student loan post-secondary ed. So I'm hoping we can do something to try and keep our students. I've got 2 recent graduates and 1 left in college, and I would like them to stay local. And hopefully this working group can come up with some good ideas to help. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. So we have our last tranche of legislators for the purpose of introductions for this first introductory meeting. We'll start with Representative Tony Walker, followed by Senator Anwar, Representative Kitt, and Representative Gucker and Arzeno. And then I think that we might be done there.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I am just very happy to get back to listening to what's going on. I'm off camera. I don't know if everybody understands. I'm recouping from a little bit of a surgery. So it's just wonderful to be with everybody and to hear and talk and share about the ideas of what we can do to try and make things much more palatable for the citizens in Connecticut who are trying to get higher education and trying to survive in a world that is so important. So thank you, everybody, for their contributions and things. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Anwar.
Can I go after somebody else? I just need to park my car so I can give full attention. So sorry.
Not Senator Anwar. For Representative Gucker.
Good afternoon, or good morning, actually. I thought it was almost afternoon, but we never know when we're in our little vacuum here. I am, first off, not to get into the college debate. In my district is the west side of one of the best universities, or the best university in Connecticut, Western Connecticut State University, which I believe we both share our allegiance to that university. But this is a very important subject, as we know, and what has already been said as far as people getting out of college with such debt to where it has actually hamstrung them to be able to afford housing, to afford to be able to go on and be able to afford to start their careers So this, I think, is a very important subject, and I look forward to this committee or this conversation happening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Representative Kit.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much to our chairs for convening this working group. I represent 134th, which includes Fairfield and Trumbull. And in Fairfield, we are home to two universities, Sacred Heart and Fairfield U. So this is a huge issue for my constituents. But aside from the two universities, we encourage our young people, all of our young people, to pursue higher education, whether that's through a university or college or technical school. And yet, when they graduate with huge amounts of debt, it really limits their upward mobility economically, professionally. So I'm so glad that we are pulling this working group together to try to find some relief for our residents who are seeking higher ed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Arzeno, followed by Senator Anwar. Senator Anwar.
I can, yes, I can go now. Thank you so much for this working group, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. This is an existential threat for our future because it's very clear that the smartest people in our communities, each one of our communities, are choosing not to pursue their careers because they cannot afford to do so. And the ones who have the careers, they cannot even buy a home anymore because they cannot afford to buy a home because they're paying their debt. And this is something that's a critical issue. Unfortunately, there has been some challenges at the federal level, but this is the time for the state yet again to pick up our responsibility and do the best that we can for our current and the future generations. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Senator. And Representative Arzeno to close us out.
Thank you very much, Representative Paris. Good morning. And good morning, co-chairs too, and looking forward to be part of this forum, this committee, and learn and see what solutions we can come up with. I am serving the 151st, the last district of Connecticut, and I serve in education, environment, transportation, and I used to be a member of the higher education committee too. Thank you very much again, and looking forward to work with all of you in this important subject.
Thank you, Representative. And thank you to all the legislators on the call for your work and for your efforts over the many years. And as you all have tried to warn us for many years of this impeding crisis, now it is here. I look forward to us all working together to try to fix what is before us. Just so we have a snapshot as of July 29th, or July 20, is today the 29th? July 29th, clearly we're on summer schedule here. July 29th, 2025 as to where we are nationally and statewide with the student loan crisis. This country holds about $1.6 trillion in federal student loans as of early this year. That's spread across 43 million borrowers across the country. Their delinquency rates jumped from under 1% during the pandemic pause to nearly 8% in the earlier part of this year. 1 in 3 federal borrowers are now over 90 days late. Roughly, that's about 1.8 million people who are at risk. The challenge that we have with that is that many of the borrowers are not now notified that they are delinquent or behind schedule because they were supposed to be notified, but many of them are only finding out because their credit scores are being hit or their checks or Social Security or any federal benefits are being garnished. Again, back to the credit piece, over 2.2 million borrowers have lost 100 plus points with their FICO scores, and more than 1 million have lost 150 points. Those who have a higher tier of credit have seen larger drops. I can tell you from personal experience, I was one of those people and try being in session while we're trying to pass a budget and then getting a whole bunch of notifications that you basically are now in default for a loan that you never even knew had happened. But luckily, there are ways that we can fix that I have had much help from advocates and obviously from the Student Loan Ombudsman's office, and that we'll hopefully share all that information with you as well. Recently, under the recent major piece of legislation that came out of Washington, the Save Income Driven Plan and other programs have been halted or restructured. So almost 2 million borrowers on income-based repayment now face a pause in forgiveness. And We're bracing for new renewed costs. Interest charges will resume August 1st, so that starts on Friday, adding an expected $3,500 more in annual interest per borrower. And for Save Plan participants, it will impact nearly 7.8 million people across the country. Now, what this looks like for us here in Connecticut, we have nearly 555,000 borrowers in the state of Connecticut. That's an increase of about 50,000 borrowers than we've seen over the last year. And they hold nearly $20.6 billion in student loan debt. The numbers that we've been sharing with folks over the last year has been around $18.9 billion. And so that has jumped over $1 billion in the last year. And that averages approximately about $40,000 per borrower. That's about 15% of our state's population that are carrying student debt. And that's not just parents, or not just students, but it's also parents. And I can tell you from folks that I've met across the state, which I'm sure many of you have met, that ranges in ages of anywhere between 22 to about 80 years old. It's interesting how late these loans persist in folks' lives. In addition to that, Connecticut, Senator Lesser and Representative Doucette and others, and Senator Miller were very supportive in working behind the scenes to support a new office. Connecticut appointed its first student loan ombudsman person to help borrowers navigate repayment issues, complaints, and access resources. And I would like to further highlight that office as it is one of the greatest resources and tools that we'll have here in the state. And so as we are talking about this moving forward, I think that I'll now pass it over as we're setting out to review goals of this working group. I'll pass it over to the student loan ombudsman person. I don't know how you do that all a Bud's woman, and also to advocates in the room to introduce themselves and to talk about some of the work and some of the goals that they hope to see through this working group.
Thank you so much. My name is Michelle Jarvis-Letman. I am the Connecticut Student Loan Ombudsperson. I have been in this role and in this office for the last year. I am so happy to hear that there are a lot of allies and support for our Connecticut student loan borrowers. Our office has been trying to work with borrowers in navigating the mundane and difficult process and getting into student loan repayment, getting back on track to help those credit scores, help them gain financial confidence in their student loan repayment, understanding their rights and responsibilities. We're also working with families at the beginning of their process so they understand what happens before they get to the college process, before they take out those loans, what's going to happen when they borrow, especially parents taking out a lot of the debt for our students as well. We're going to continue working with these borrowers and providing resources and information for them to make the right plans as these plans change on the federal level. And I'm glad, again, I'm very happy to hear that we have a lot of advocates for our borrowers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that I get to follow you because we worked so hard to make sure that we had a student loan ombuds in the state. My name is Krista Estrada Perez. I'm the executive director of the Student Loan Fund and also a student loan borrower. I have about $70,000 of student debt just for myself. My mom has about $90,000, including a $15,000 Parent Plus loan that she took out for me to be able to finish school. So I come to you today not just as the executive director of the Student Loan Fund, but also as somebody who is impacted by student debt herself. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the many legislative champions and organizers and borrowers who continue to fight student debt crises and continue to fight for state-based solutions as we continue to see what's happening at the national level. We are the Student Loan Fund. We are nonprofit leaders, artists, truck drivers, social workers, chefs, teachers, all directly impacted by student debt. We are committed to rebuilding a broken system and building power across Connecticut to cancel student debt and to have mitigation strategies in the state, including something like the Student Loan Ombudsperson and the Student Loan Reimbursement Program that we also advocated and organized for. Before the pandemic, one of the things that I want to share with you all is that we already had a student debt crisis. One of the reasons we had the PSLF waiver, that we have the Fresh Start program, is because we recognize on the national level how bad the student debt crisis was. Now, for me, my answer is always very simple in the sense of like student debt cancellation is the answer to such a broken system. But the mitigation strategies were important. The SAFE programs were important. The Fresh Starts were important. And as we're going down this path, one of the constituents that I'm worried about the most are Parent Plus holders, because the reality of it is that a lot of the repayment programs that they were eligible for that was somewhat affordable, they're not eligible for, and that will compromise their ability to get cancellation. I'm also worried about the elders who have student debt both at the national level but at the state. We know that borrowers are actually retiring with student debt. We know how impactful that is to be retiring with student debt, knowing that you're not going to be working. We know borrowers who are have not been getting answers from their servicers, from MOHELA, from the Department of Education, because of the onslaught and the fact that they're not processing the income-driven repayment applications, that they are not actually moving forward as fast as borrowers need to. So we are witnessing over and over again how the goalpost gets moved. Borrowers follow the instructions. They do what they're supposed to do. They enroll in the programs that they're supposed to enroll in, and then the entire table is shifted and turned, right? So I'm really excited to be here, and we'll talk data and all the other things, but we'll hear also from borrowers and their experiences. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure we recognize is the reality that when we're talking about student borrowers, we're talking about not just their borrowers, but we're also talking about their family members, their renters and homeowners, their parents. Some of them have student debt themselves, and they're putting their kids through college, right? So this is a thing that is impacting us, a crisis that is impacting us, not just the borrowers, but our communities at large. So I'm happy to be here and happy to continue to have this conversation because we know how important it is to have that in the state.
Thank you both for your efforts, and I would now like to just recognize Director Tim Larson, the Director of the Office of Higher Education. Director Larson.
Thank you, Representative Paris. I apologize. My camera is not working correctly, but thank you very much for all the hard work everyone on the committee is doing in trying to address this very, very important issue. The Office of Higher Education's working hand in glove with many people to administer the student loan reimbursement program. What I can provide for you today is a draft of the highlights of last year's activities. As you're well aware, there were a few tweaks made in this legislative session. We're working with our vendor, Nelnet, to process those new nuances onto the application. And we feel very confident that we're starting to get solicitations now, but we will have a full blown reopening of the next tranche of dollars for August 15th, 2025. So let me just give you some highlights of the current program. So the total amount that we've approved for reimbursing was $1,472,516. We approved 558 applicants out of a total of 1,813 applicants. The balance there, of course, is the difference between incomplete and or ineligible students for the various reasons. We had an accumulation of 116,795 in administrative costs. We staffed the office with 3 personal service agreements where we have 3 individuals at around 93,000. We'll get you the exact numbers once we true this out, but I want to give you a feel for what this is looking like. Our advertising budget was 20,000, and then we had equipment and supplies of 2,812. Of the program funds, you appropriated $6 million. We issued $1,472,000 in reimbursements, minus the administrative costs. So we have a remaining balance of $4,410,000. And we also have the ability through this program that we have used with the application process, and this was voluntarily information given, the demographic studies, which I can include to you, really sort of broken down by dollar values. We can also break down the racial and ethnic composition that was reported. And I'll provide the committee and chairs of both appropriations and higher ed, et cetera, a full detailed summary. It's difficult, as you can imagine, in the summer to staff is on vacation, and so we're trying to allow for vacation so that when we ramp up after August 15th, we have everybody on deck. So that's the overall picture. I think it was, for the first year, a great success. We're anticipating the same number of borrowers coming back to us and looking for yet another round of financing. And then hopefully newer individuals, now that the program has had a year to sort of be explained. From a marketing perspective, we're going to try to reuse all of our contacts at all of the Connecticut public and private institutions and for-profit institutions. As you know, we also distribute the Roberta Willis Scholarship money to all of the colleges. So we're going to use that as sort of a launching pad for advertising. We're going to try to get into alumni magazines. We're going to try to do a twist into the larger cities, Bridgeport, Hartford, New Haven, New London, Waterbury, etc., so that we can drill into where we think the high impact will be. And like everything else, the percentage of money that's allotted for administrative costs, this go round, we were very fortunate enough to have a robust system in Nelnet that could accommodate this application process, and they're a delight to work with. One of the new nuances with this program this year that we're still filtering is the allotment of the Stone graduates or Stone Academy students that did not, necessarily get a certificate. So we're trying to build in some redundancy on the application so that when those folks apply, there's a separate line for them and we can do it accordingly. All in all, I think it's been a great success. I think it's a great tool. I appreciate the effort that the legislature's put into this, and we'll have this ready to go August 15th with a report out to you prior to starting on the current year.
Thank you, Director Larson. We appreciate your efforts. And for those of you who are watching or are a little confused and missed the point, Director Larson was speaking to the student loan reimbursement program, which was a bipartisan program that we have funded and has finally went live as of January. And so now during this time, I think it'll be helpful for us as we're looking at goals for each of us to take field questions to our advocates and also the Office of Higher Education and the Student Loan Ombudsman Office. Field questions so we can start thinking about the goal setting process here, and then we will try to, and then we'll love to hear from the rest of you of any of the goals that you would like to see take place for us to discuss on our next agenda for our next meeting next month. Representative Walker, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the opportunity. I apologize for being off camera. Mr. Larson, good to see you. Commissioner Larson, I'm glad to hear some of the stats that you gave us, but I have a couple of questions about it. So the allocation was $6 million. You said that we basically gave out a total of 1.4 million, or was that including expenses?
The reimbursements, what we issued to applicants was 1.472516. The administrative costs, which we were allowed inside that 6 million, were $116,795.56.
116,700. Okay, so going forward, I would assume that you probably are looking at where were the things that where did we go wrong, or where did we go right, and how we can improve the process going forward. Have you started doing that analysis already?
Well,
yes or no? Yes or no?
Well, yes and no, frankly. So, when this was brought to our agency with $6 million, we thought that there was just going to be a straight up avalanche of applicants. And we found out that, we had 1,800 total applicants, and there were some nuances with regards to the to the application process and the eligibility and so forth, which is why we came back to you guys and said, hey, listen, maybe we've got to fine tune some of the recs so that people understand, like the nonprofit hours were an issue. The veteran stuff were issues. What actually qualified, were issues. And I think we handled those on balance. The demographics of this, we can tell you by age, we can tell you by certain ethnicity. So when you say, what are you doing? We're collecting this data. I can issue you this data. I don't have anybody that works in my office that has the ability to, I can give you the numbers. We can make our own sort of findings on this, but we had anticipated money in, money out with some record of, for example, we wrote a check for $8 for somebody based on what they were able to qualify for. The average award was $2,700. So as we get experience with this, I think it will tell us how best to modify or improve on the program. But from a management or administrative perspective, taking the applications in and processing them, I think we did a real good job. As far as how best to shape and market, we've said before that we spent $20,000 primarily
marketing
with the Latino Way, which has they're a state contractor. They do a large volume of work in big cities in the minority community, and I think that bears some fruit for us. But the numbers are the numbers, and I don't know what to judge those against in our first round, and that's what it is. So to the extent that we put in the new parameters and we're ready to go, you've given us another allotment of money, and obviously we want to regard this very carefully. We want to know where everything is going. So ostensibly, the remaining balance is $4 million, and we have some carry forward ability. So if we do this right, I think that people will apply earlier. We will probably exhaust all of the funding. I just feel confident that how we're going about it.
Director Larson, I think Representative Walker has a follow-up question, and Representative Walker, this is very similar to that of appropriations, so it's 2 questions per person, ma'am. No
Yes.
sub.
I couldn't get a word in edgewise. He was on a roll. Okay. I appreciate.
I was channeling my old state rep. I was on the mic. I couldn't be interrupted.
Okay, I'm sorry it takes so much time, but I guess what I would really like, and I'm glad that you got 3 people. I mean, I can't tell you how many other agencies would love to get 3 people into their staffing because of the number of people that have had such a reduction, and you were able to get 3.
Well, understand that these are not full-time employees. These are people on personal service agreements. These are contractors that we picked up.
What I would like to have happen, Mr. Chair, I hope that you and all the other members have the same feeling, is that we'd like to get the data to see, because we need to evaluate the process that we're doing, and we need to make sure that we are getting to the number of people. I believe the young lady mentioned that it was over 500,000 people that desperately need this help, and we're just starting to scratch at the surface. So the most important thing for us right now is to get the data, find out where the corrections need to be, and start to put them in place, because I'm very happy we're helping out Stone Academy. But what we don't want to do is have other people put in more programming to take away from the original plan that we had this money for, which was to provide relief to people on their student loans so that they will continually educate themselves and more people will go out for higher education. So I look forward to getting the data. And if you want, I'm sure my co-chair and I can send you a letter so that we can provide that, get that information from you. If not,
I have a draft prepared for all of you folks. I'm just triple checking the numbers to make sure. I should be able to get something to you by the end of this week, I believe.
That would be wonderful. It doesn't have to be perfect, sir. We understand. I mean, that's okay.
Well,
but getting started with the information and getting an opportunity to evaluate it is the most.
We've got some good data to share. It is what it is, and we're happy to do it. I just want to make sure it's
Director
right.
Larson, I think also what would be helpful to the working group and also to this legislative body is that you would also include a marketing plan of how you intend to market the program over the next few months as we go into the next year. And I think that there should be an expansion because we have young people who are in their 20s and elderly folks who are in their 80s who are still paying student loans. So while I do like that there is a cultural marketing understanding, I do think that that needs to be expanded, not just citywide. It needs to be expanded to the rural areas and the suburbs. But we need to have a more expansive marketing plan, whether it's through social media or mailing efforts. I just want to have that also included in anything that you do provide to us. So I hope that you all will be, I know that you will be thoughtful in terms of what you submit to the group on that.
Well, like my mother used to say, nothing little money can't cure.
Yeah, that is true. And I would have to agree with your mother on that. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Representative Walker. We have Senator Lesser, followed by Representative Cavros DeGraw, and then we have a few comments here from our advocates.
Yes, thank you. And just a question for Director Larson and also for our two expert panelists here. Looking at what changed in the OBBB federal legislation, there are now new lifetime caps on how many loans a student can take. There's the elimination of the Federal Graduate Plus program, which I think takes place immediately. The lifetime cap, I think, starts next July. There are also new caps on the Federal Parent Plus program. And so the overall impact is going to dramatically limit the type of loans and the number of loans that students can take to go to college and graduate school in Connecticut. I did have some back and forth with UConn trying to understand the impact on UConn. I don't know what the impact is on our, I have less of a sense of how it's going to impact the CSU system and on our other schools in the state. But it does seem like an important question. So I guess what I'm sort of thinking about is there a way to target Roberta Willis, or I don't think Chesla is with us today, but our Chesla student loan program, just to sort of make up that gap so that we don't have a situation where a student, could be a student currently enrolled in, let's say, a PhD program is going to have to drop out of school because they can't take additional loans out. That's the question I'm trying to figure out right now. Nobody all at once.
I think the Graduate Plus loan program is definitely going to be an issue that does take effect July 1st, 2026. However, if a borrower is currently still in their program right now, they have 3 years left to complete that program with said funding. So it's not going to be completely cut off, just nobody new can get in to borrow those loans. So we do have some time to think about the current borrowers. They have a little bit of gap if they are going to finish in the next 3 years. It's the new borrowers or people who haven't had to borrow in the past that now need to think about how are we going to fund, our education for that. And same with the Parent Plus loans. So if they're a current Parent Plus loan borrower with their student enrolled in school currently, they have 3 years without the limits to get that taken care of. If you have a family, though, that has a student currently in and then a new student starting next fall, they will be on 2 different rules. And that's where the confusion and the chaos, I think, is going to start for parents because now they have to think about what they're going to do, and that's when the limits take place.
And is the goal that if you are low income, you're just not going to be able to go to medical school or dental school or get an MBA? Is that the idea?
I think we'll have to be strategic about the borrowing. We have to work with our colleges and universities about cost as well. Some scholarships potentially if you are low income, and not just looking to borrowing. Like there should be grant funding and other resources available for our students who want to take on these professions. But we're going to be in a jam. We're there. Like Krista said, we've been knocking on the door of a crisis, and now it's hitting us in the face. And these low income and middle income families are going to struggle significantly trying to figure out a way to get funding to go to school.
If I can add one thing about that, I think one of the things that one of the impacts that it's going to have is that yes, the reality of it is that working class students, we are going to have to really think about, like Michelle said, what we're going to do in terms of cost, in terms of how we're going to, because the reality of it is if you don't have generational wealth, you cannot afford to go to college with the cost that we have today. And the likely scenario, you might be able to get private loans, which are often predatory, but you also need co-signers for that in the same way that well, you're more likely if you're a working class person, especially if you're a student of color, who doesn't have that access to generational wealth or what I call generational credit, right? And access to those folks, then you will not be able to get as much as you can. And you might be subjected to have to do private loans if at all, or you might just be not able to afford student debt. I mean, for college, and which we already knew was an issue, which is why we have student debt in the first place, because people have to go to college. We need our nurses, we need our doctors, we need our community members, even so we need to be able to do a little bit more, and they're going to suffer if we do not have an answer to their ability to go to school. And we are going to see the impact of that in primary care positions. We're going to see that not only in education, but also in special education, which we already have an issue with. So you're going to see that as a bigger. And one thing I'll say is what we need to acknowledge is that this is a big overhaul of the process, right? It is not just a new change in program. It's a big overhaul. So we're going to have to learn the new programs. We're going to have to, there's going to be two different types of communication for the type of program you're in. So there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be happen, and reimbursement support has to be part of that process, because we know right now only 38% of students, loan holders, are in repayment, and that's because they cannot afford to be in repayment.
But we have this issue where we have a group of people who can maybe now sort of make graduate school work, college work. They're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to go to education, get their education certificates. They're not going to be able to, or master's in education. They're not going to be able to go to med school. We have programs right now that provide state-backed student loans through CHESLA. We have the Roberta Willis Scholarship. I'm just trying to think: do we have tools on the state level to try to mitigate some of that gap? Is there some room there, or is the scale just too big?
I think part of it, the scale's big, but I think CHESLA, if you look at the numbers for CHESLA, the folks who get mostly denied are folks in Waterbury, Hartford, Newport, New Haven, and working class neighborhoods. And that's because they do not have access to co-signers. My understanding through CHESLA, we did a working group a while back, was that they needed to be able to get the repayment because that's how they fund new loans. And so unless we change the structure of that, it's going to be limited. And unless we increase, which we know we haven't increased funding in higher education grants in a while, even if we have to do that, we have to do that aggressively. But CHESLA also, we have to change a lot about CHESLA because the most marginalized students are not going to have access to the CHESLA loans.
Representative Cabral-DeGraw.
Thanks so much. And I will just add to that the other challenge is, as much as we love having the Roberta Scholarship Program, when I talk to students that are actively there that have received Roberta Willis, the challenge is I'll say, if you don't mind my asking, did you also have to take out student loans? And 99 out of 100, they're going to say, yes, I also had to take out a student loan. So while it is important that we continue funding scholarships, we have to understand that scholarships are not meeting the need either in terms of making sure that people are getting out of college without a lot of debt. So my question sort of, it works out, that dovetails to Senator Lesser's regarding that bill that just passed in Washington. What additional safeguards do we think we need in order to move forward? And are those safeguards that we should be advocating at the federal level for, or are those safeguards that we could be putting into place here in Connecticut? I was very heartened to hear from the ombudswoman that, she's counseling people ahead of taking loans. I think that's really important. But are there other safeguards we can put into place? And I would say either Michelle or Krista, if you're prepared to take that question, that would be great.
I mean, I think part of, I want to sit with that question and give you a more thorough answer for sure. But I think the first thing that comes to mind is At the federal level, we have to advocate to give more access and power to our ombuds, right, at the state level to make sure that they have access to the back end. Oftentimes, we've had to work around, right? Department have to reach out to contacts in the Department of Education to try to get answers to a borrower's concerns, and have to use our own networks that we've built. And part of being able to do better is to have a student loan ombuds that has access to federal data. I think that's going to be really important to the federal system, the repayment system. That's one of it. But I think the other part of it is we have to really think about this crisis is only going to get worse. So we have to think about what are some big solutions that we could be advocating at the federal level. Yes, we have to think about tuition and tuition pricing at the state level. We have to think thoroughly about at the federal level what it looks like to speak to uh, have a repayment system. They just overhauled this whole repayment system, right, and gave us the new RAP program. We could do the same at the federal level in a way that is actually beneficial for borrowers, that cuts through a lot of the mismanagement from the servicers, and ultimately that leads to a cancellation process that it is not like this. So we can be powerful and we can be visionary in how we want to advocate. I mean, I'll always lead with the fact that at the national level, the only solution is cancellation. Whether it's Mohila, whether it's Navient, we have seen how servicers behave and their lack of like the way that they handle their borrowers. So we have to have that conversation. But in the meantime, we have to protect. And we have to fight for more programs like SAFE, like PSLF, and make sure that they are following, that they're processing the IDR applications, and that we are having communications about that too. So there's a lot, and I definitely want to give more thoughts to it, but that is the first couple of things that come to mind.
And then just to take it one step further down, I think just having the conversation about cost, utilizing our state system, our community college system, pushing our students to use that free resource to them, making sure there's programs available for our students to take advantage of going to school for free, getting those prerequisites out of the way at no cost to them so that they can continue to educate their further education further and have that borrowing power in their pocket when they're making those next further steps forward. So really coming together and making sure we're all on the same page and aligning up and working together in a cohesive state unit. I think that's very important because we're seeing students leaving the state because they can go at a lower cost. And if we're trying to keep people here, we need to work together to keep our students here. I have a high school student. She's looking to go out of state. She's not even thinking about coming into state. And I'm like, I think you could do that. But also I understand the cost of that. And as a parent, I don't want to take on that debt for her either and be stuck with that. So we really need to like think about all of that coming together and forward. I did want to backtrack real quick to Director Larson and the student loan repayment program. I do think that we saw the lower numbers because most students aren't in repayment. Most borrowers have not been in repayment status. They've been stuck in save. They've been in forbearance. So I do think we'll see an uptick with students going into repayment and borrowers wanting to have that reimbursement. So the student loan person would be gladly helping with the marketing and the tools and the research and pushing this program out to the borrowers so that they have access to the information.
And I would just add to that marketing conversation, because I was going to bring it up before. We, the state reps and state senators on this call, also have a responsibility to do marketing. Most of us send out a weekly e-news, or even if you're sending out monthly, whatever it might be. This is something that, in a bipartisan way, we can absolutely be advertising to all of our constituents so that they know it is available to them, so that they know it's a possibility. And frankly, advertising that we have this new ombudsperson program, because I think that people aren't aware of that either. And so the more information that we can get out, the better it is, because we want people applying. We want people reaching out to you ahead of time to have those conversations, to make these smart decisions. I mean, I hadn't even thought really honestly about the fact that we're losing kids just to going out of state because it's less expensive. That's insane. So, that's something that we should all be really discussing and figuring out, where we can go from here on that piece as well. So thank you both for your answers. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
I just wanted to add one thing, Representative, is that the two things that really come to mind, I mentioned them before, but I wanted to think about what it looks like here in the state is Parent Plus holders. They're going to be experiencing something very serious in the next couple of years, and older borrowers. And I think thinking about what state, whether this is this reimbursement program or however we structure it, that we pay special attention to Parent Plus holders and those who are retiring with debt, because those are some of the most marginalized populations because of the fact that the Parent Plus holders are not going to have a version, like an affordable version of cancellation, and elder borrowers are often not able to go back and get PSLF and all the other stuff, right? So I think paying special attention to Parent Plus holders and elder borrowers is going to be important for Connecticut as well as we figure out strategy.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Dillon.
Thank you very much. It would be very helpful. I haven't been on higher ed for a while, although I was on it for many years. If we had a document, and there may be one, and already that outlines, for example, the federal changes, I believe, go beyond the lifetime caps, which would be very dramatic for med students or nursing students, but also when do you have to, when does interest start accruing? When do you have to start paying? And it would really fall in the bucket of what you should know before you take out a loan. And that's really important for parents, because I've spoken with parents who had co-signed their students' loans. And so when you say older borrowers, I don't know what you mean, but some of the older borrowers I know or I've heard about are people who co-signed their students' loans and their kids' loans and are now struggling with that. So if you had a document like that outlined the federal changes before you actually take out a loan, that identifies the program and what it can do, maybe lists the resources, and then we can start providing that information to our own districts who don't necessarily know any of this. That would be really, really helpful. And thank you. This has been a great discussion. But a document, please.
Thank you, Representative. And I would have to agree with that. I want to add on to that because I think what might also be really important, especially in this day and age where we are redefining wealth and what that looks like. I read an article in The Atlantic about a family in California, two working parents, both college educated. They make a combined salary of $300,000 a year, and they're still renting. And it's actually more cost effective for them to rent than to buy a home. And now they are sending two kids to college. And I think what we have to understand is that for young people in our state, for families in our state, we have to know and share with them how their loan will affect their housing, will affect transportation, will affect food insecurity. 1 in 4 college students are food insecure because of what they have to pay back in their loans. Now, I just consolidated my loans again, and I'm now paying $800 and what was it again? Because you did that for me, madam. $896 a month until I'm 63 years old. And what we have to understand is that this does come down to gender, it does come down to race, it does come down to a lot of things. 10 years after you take out a student loan, usually white men have paid off 90% of the loan. Meanwhile, women and people of color and more working class folks have only paid off 9% of their loan. So we have to also talk to people about that trajectory, a roadmap of what this looks like for all of the other decisions that are set to come afterwards. Cecil, I see that you have a question. I'd like to just recognize you for the moment. Or perhaps not.
Working on technology. Oops.
Can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Better. That's much better. Thank you.
That was awkward. Two mics were on. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in here and for the invitation. We got our invitation from our colleague, Krista. I represent the Connecticut Area Health Education Center at UConn. We are the other, Director Lawson, we are administering a student loan repayment program for the healthcare sector, targeting geographies that are underserved, medically underserved, and working with FQHCs, DMAS facilities, DOC facilities, and any other providers who are in our health provider shortage areas. One of the things that I just wanted to add to the conversation, which we agree with many of the things that Director Larson talked about in terms of administering these programs. They are labor intensive. Some of my colleagues are here who can speak to that if anybody else wants to know what our experience has been trying to administer student loan repayment to 58 organizations, 188 individuals in Connecticut who are working at 148 practice sites. We can share some of our insights. But one of the things that I sort of just wanted to add to the conversation is what we have learned through administering our program is there is a threshold point at which the financial intervention is effective. So being able to do a sensitivity test on all our borrowers and then grouping them and figuring out what intervention works for which demographic might be something we need to be moving towards. I'll give you an example. We know our social workers have a high debt to income ratio. And when you put them in the model that we are using here, they are more likely to stay in the loan repayment program and more likely to invest in the loan repayment program for their own participation, because at the current wages we pay in Connecticut, many of them will not be able to repay their student loans until they retire. But whereas dentists might want to stay in Connecticut, but when you put them in our model, they are almost like that. I'm not interested in a student loan repayment program because the income level, whether it's in Connecticut or in an adjacent state, is high enough for them to move out. So as we are thinking about how to work the new system that we're in, some of the things that we might want to look at, how can we have a progressive income tax that incentivizes providers employers in a very prospective way to participate in student loan repayment, because not all of our all our employers in the state are participating and supporting these programs with full faith. And some of that, we can talk about later as to why those reasons exist in Connecticut. But I think looking at what the legislator can also help us with, for those of us who are administering these programs, is to really create conditions that allow for more discretionary income to stay with people. So whether that's through progressive taxes, or that's working with employers to advocate for living wage across all our service industries, I think that will be helpful in this economy that we're in. But one of the things that I just wanted to share is being able to do in our analysis a sensitivity test to test out who truly is sensitive to a loan repayment intervention versus who, and this is maybe where Krista might say it's sort of like a reparations model. If you were to think of it, not everybody else is sensitive to the intervention of student loan or student relief. Some people need it more, some are not. And because we're in a situation that we're in with the federal government, I think as a state, we need to start thinking about what are those sort of like restorative ways of implementing a program like this with the constraints we have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. And it sounds like what you were suggesting just as a follow-up is likely a student loan default prevention program, which I know has been discussed with Senator Lesser and Representative Doucette and Representative Cavers-DeGraw and Representative Walker and Senator Austin. It's a lot of folks. And so it sounds like that's what that you're mentioning, and I will add that to the list of things for us to look at as we move forward. Thank you. Director Larson, you have a comment, sir? Question?
I do. Thank you again. Just a quick comment. As we do this work looking for relief on Connecticut borrowing, and I'll call on Ram Abastaria as well from our office in a moment, but it occurs to me that we have in my office where we have the responsibilities, and again, we're a compliance office, so we take policy and disseminate it, right? And we do a fantastic job, by the way. But from the student loan reimbursement perspective, looking at this, taking a step back, this is after students have completed and have already signed on to their colleges and their debt, and we're trying to figure that out from that end. The Roberta Willis is sort of on the front end, but we control the amount and who gets the scholarship, but we don't control the actual costs at these schools, right? So we have the end, we have the beginning, and we have a very effective program currently, and we call it the Minority Teacher Incentive Program. And I believe, Ram, maybe you can talk a little bit about this, but we get effectively a sum of money. We work with guidance counselors at the school. So if you're going to get a teaching certificate at a Connecticut school, we effectively give you a stipend your junior, senior year. When you get out and start your job, you get another stipend. And when you have worked for a period of years, you get the finish on that. And that's $20,000 that goes directly to pay off your bill. And it's a targeted occupation, and it's very effective. So I think it's important as we start to look at how we're dealing with this globally from the state's perspective, we need to look at the actual costs associated that we are effectively buying back, right? We regulate, or we issue against the state colleges and the independent colleges with kids from Connecticut going to Connecticut colleges, and we give them a scholarship. Not all of these scholarship kids finish, but they also are responsible for debt. So that's something to ponder. And we're doing an analysis now. Ram can talk a little bit about how we're trying to identify what goes on with the Roberta Willis Scholarship. I think this may help answer Senator Lesser's original question about, what we can sort of do to configure that. And that's sort of an ongoing study. Ram, are you able to comment on that?
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Commissioner. So a couple of years back, and I'll keep my comments really brief. I know we're getting short on time. We applied for an IES grant, which is a federal grant from the Department of Education, and it was to do a longitudinal study, with regards to the Roberta Willis program. What we want to try to achieve is, what is our ROI, return on investment, with respects to the funds that the legislature gives us, and to be able to say, is this program, how effective is it? The people that have received the scholarship, where are they, let's say 5 to 10 years from now? Are they staying within Connecticut? Are they finding gainful employment jobs? And with that, we would be able to, put that report out, to the General Assembly to be able to say, these are the findings that we've been determining within our research. This has been a collaboration between the Office of Higher Education, OPM, State Department of Education, and Department of Labor. What we're transitioning now is to do that collaboration now is with the Department of Labor to be able to say, okay, these are the individuals that have received the scholarships, and where are they now? Again, are they in Connecticut? Are they getting quality paying jobs, and so forth. And then I just wanted to make one last comment with regards to, the SLIR program. This program is phenomenal, and it's only the advertising. Not only will be with the partners that we have, but this program will also be advertised for the participants that are receiving it. And I think come January 1st, the monies that are being processed is going to exponentially explode. And the reason why I say that is because the people that have received the dollars this year, if the monies that they've received this year, if they put it into the loans, again, moving forward, that's only going to incentivize people to get additional dollars. So again, from the numbers that Commissioner Larson said earlier, with the approximately 1.5 that we spent this year, those same people, if they apply those dollars they received, they're going to put in for that reimbursement, the following year. So again, this is a great program, and kudos to the legislature for putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. And Commissioner Larson, please forgive me for referring to you as director. I apologize. I know how I don't want to come off as dismissive by doing that. It's almost like calling me a senator instead of representative. So, and I said that for Lesser here. So do accept.
Just don't call me late to dinner.
Yeah, thank you. Representative Delnicki.
Good afternoon. And I can't help but think about the fact that we almost need to approach this with a financial literacy component, because that is going to be a very effective program for our graduates from high school. And if we can actually take that program and expand it in such a fashion so that the lessons they learn there become usable and utilized as they go forward, when they look at their loans, look at their portfolio, look at what they're going to do, and what their end goal is when it comes to their education, and what they want to do from a career path. And I think all that plays into this whole financial literacy that we were very successful on a couple of years ago, and creating that same situation here of a educational literacy financing component. I think if we can grab a hold of that and do something with it, I think we've got a great opportunity where young people won't get overly burdened. They'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. They'll understand exactly what they have to do to get past that point and to get their loans, A, paid off, and B, a good job. So I think that's got to be a key component here.
Thank you, Representative. We do appreciate that. Representative Cabral-Sugra, I see that you have a question for the second time, ma'am. Good co-chair.
Sorry, let me get that camera on. That's always my challenge. So, there's so many options right now, and especially with the changes at the federal level, who are they turning to help to? I mean, as the ombudsman, are you hearing from them? Are they getting answers generally other places? Where are they getting their answers from, and how can we maybe better direct them to you if you're the right person, or to Krista? What's the best way for us to get people what they need?
I think it's going to be a group effort. Social media is huge for a lot of borrowers, and there's a lot of misinformation, I believe, out there on social media as well. So yes, I would say direct them to the Ombudsman office. Our website has done a massive overhaul in the last 6 months of providing accurate information in one key location, whether it's federal or private loans for our borrowers. We will work with the Student Loan Fund also group because we are a very small office, so we will need the assistance. So, we encourage you to push borrowers to our office. That is what we are here for. We want to give out the information. We want to share resources. This week alone, I've spent an average of 30 to 40 minutes with borrowers navigating their student aid portfolio, navigating their Mohila account or their Nelnet account to try to navigate them and what the next step should be, what they need to do, how to get that forbearance in so that they can take a breath and figure out what their next steps are going to be. And that's what we're here for. So please continue to push them to our office.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think two things I wanted to add as well. The Student Loan Fund runs a borrower consult program where we do borrower supports one-on-one over Zoom, where borrowers can come in and get a better understanding of what kind of student debt they have, what their repayment options are. We are not lawyers, accountants, or any of that, right? But we know the student loan system enough to help folks process their PSLF application, their IDR. If there's hiccups along the way, we tend to have partnerships with the student loan ombuds. That's so we can escalate those issues. We have actually a borrower webinar info session happening tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. over Zoom, and it will be a info session between SLF, the Student Loan Ombuds of Connecticut, and Senator Murphy's constituent services. And what we're going to do that is go over what's happening at the federal level, and of course, be able to create and share with borrowers that there is a system of support in the state and who they can reach out to. So they can reach out to us at SLF. We will work with them one-on-one, but also we will be able to connect them with either state-based resources or national partners who might be able to help them. So those are two ways. And I think as much as we can share out the Student Loan Ombuds office, that's going to be really important. And the more we can provide support for that office to be able to do what they do, because this is a laborious process to be able to go through, right, individually with borrowers.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chair, I think we need to get that link for everyone so that they can perhaps share on social media, et cetera, that's happening tomorrow afternoon, because that sounds like an incredibly valuable resource. And Krista, I hope you're recording it so that if we don't get it live, we can get it after the fact.
Thank you, ma'am. Senator Lesser.
Thank you. That raised some questions for me, and I totally second the need for that link, Madam Chair. But just a question about how we can leverage the student loan ombudsman more, or ombuds person more. Clearly there is a lot of confusion out there. We're all confused. We're trying to understand what the federal changes are. And so are there specific ways that we can, aside from just generally the need for more resources, are there particular ways that we can empower or use the Office of Student Loan Ombuds more effectively to serve the population? And what can we do to support your work?
I think sharing again, like the resources for our office. I would also like to continue to work with like the Office of Higher Education, even the Office of Education in general, like secondary education, getting into the high schools, like getting access to parents, students, families that are thinking about taking that college journey and starting to have that conversation with them. I know I have access in like my hometown, like because people know me and know who I am, so they'll let me in. They know all of you as representatives of the state, so if you can allow them to let us to come in and help them and share information, I'm more than happy to travel around the state. I will do Zoom, whatever is necessary. We just need you all to advocate for us and say like, hey, we have a great resource. Please let them come in, let them talk to you, and we will do that and provide access and information to them. So the more that you can just say, hey, do you know we have an ombudsman office? I think we'll go a long way, because I'm still shocked to hear that people just don't know the office exists. So if we can do a better job collectively of saying we have this great state resource that you all fought very hard to get to be here, I'm very happy to be here. So I want to be able to share the knowledge and resources of our office.
I think that's super helpful. And Senator, I appreciate the question. I would just like to charge. I have a list of things here that need to obviously be done before our next meeting, and some deadline dates per the request of the members within this working group. So if we could have the Office of Higher Education and the Student Loan Ombudsman Office find ways and identify a few ways of how you plan to work together and use the resources of both offices to better educate the public. And if we can get a tentative plan on that by the 13th of August, that would be helpful. For you, Commissioner Larson, I know that there was a request from many of our members, including Representative Walker and Senator Austin. If you could please have the report with all of the information and demographical information, information around how many folks have received anything from the SLIRT program, and also a marketing plan. If you could have that to us by August 13th, that would be also very helpful, and we can share that with the committee, the working group after. And then there are just 5 other plans or 5 other goals that I think that we should perhaps look at that are coming from other parts of the state, which had bipartisan support from both Republicans and Democrats and were signed by both Republican and Democratic governors. First is first would be a debt data dashboard, which would establish a public-facing real-time data dashboard that tracks the statewide trends in student loan debt, repayment rates, delinquency, forgiveness progress, and geographic disparities. I think that'll be super helpful for us, as this touches every district in the state. Colorado did this, and they called it it was a similar data tool that was called it was a similar data tool that was brought up through the Department of Higher Education in Colorado, which tracked the borrower by zip code. So I think that that is one goal that we should set out to look at. And I will send all of these, of course, in an updated email after the meeting. Also, a statewide student loan borrower relief navigator. This would essentially fund and deploy trained borrower navigators statewide and through regional nonprofits. It would also include many of the resources that we have, both with advocates outside the building, advocates within our state government, to help Connecticut residents better understand their options, repayment plans, consolidation and forgiveness programs. We talk about the financial literacy piece there, Representative. That was done in New York, and it was done through the Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program called EdCap. The third, which I believe was a suggestion not only from senators and representatives, but also from some advocates here today, is create a pilot Connecticut student loan default prevention program. So we would partner with employers, schools, and community lenders to identify at-risk borrowers early, or one of the agencies that we're already currently working with, and offer emergency micro grants, deferment guidance, and one-time debt relief before a borrower goes into default, so it does not hit their credit score, therefore hurting them in other aspects of their life. This was done in Massachusetts, and it's called a Path to Zero plan. We would last thing that I'll mention is developing a borrower bill of rights specific to our state, which I think would be very helpful. I know throughout the pause period, many loans were sold to different servicers, therefore jacking up the interest rates amongst other things. And so this would be able to just give a state level consumer protection, which I think we have something in place, but we could expand upon that. Senator, you are giving me a look as though you already have a solution to this, which I'm happy about.
No, I'm interested. We do have
Right.
a law, and the law has been strengthened by Senator Miller and Representative Doucette over a number of years. So I'm curious where you're going with this, but certainly we could use stronger protections for servicers. That is certainly a persistent issue.
Absolutely. I think that this would obviously help the Ombudsman office and also the higher education office. So this would strengthen the bill by giving a more timely access to the Ombudsman services. It would recourse some misapplied payments for forbearance abuse, which we could fight on behalf of our constituents with the federal government on that, because it's very hard to get in touch with anyone with the Department of Education right now, if we still have one. And it would also ban any abusive collection tactics as well, at least with state loans if possible, and help us to be able to figure out ways to help them on the federal protection. And that was also done in California. So lots of good things there that I can send in a follow-up email to all of the members once we have the reports back in from the Office of Higher Education and the Student Loan Ombudsman Office on the 13th of August. Any other questions? Concerns? I've accidentally logged out of the Zoom, so if there's anyone that would like to speak, just go ahead until I log back in, please. All right, seeing none, our next meeting will be
Commissioner Larson.
Commissioner for the
Sorry, just a quick question. Your clerk is going to send me an email with the requirements we've discussed in the meeting, correct?
Yes, sir. You will get that email likely by the end of this week, sir.
Well, that's fine. I just want to respond to that. That's great. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Great
Thank you,
job.
sir.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions and/or comments, we will reconvene on the 25th of August at 11 a.m. And we will be sending updates to the group based on where we are. If there are any other updates or solutions or suggestions that members of the working group might have, please forward those to us before the 13th of August so that we might be able to distribute that to the rest of the membership so that we will be able to discuss that at our meeting on the 25th. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.